to be like, yeah, Justin, I'm glad you apologized to the natives or whatever, or yeah, I'm glad you gave them money, or yeah, I'm glad you apologized to the LGBTQ community and gave them money or whatever, or like, dealing with all these lawsuits or whatever. It's just like, it's one thing for that, and it's another for him to like subconsciously, like, you know what I mean? It's like Peterson was talking about this in regards to the Ontario, the lawyers. I can't remember the name of it. The lawyers in Ontario were basically like system-wide asked to do this survey agreeance, like contract thing that basically stated in the terms that they would fix the systemic prejudice, racism, whatever it was in the lawyer pool. And it's like, in agreeing to sign that, you're saying that there's a problem with the system when the system is just a bunch of individuals, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it seems like we're just kind of passing the buck onto something more abstract than just the behavior of individual human beings. It's
exactly.
like, it's not our fault collectively as humans. Like, it's like the system's fault. Yeah, but it's like, who made the system?
Exactly. It's like, well, of course, there's going to be a bunch of straight white guys in Canada being lawyers. You know?
Exactly, and this is something
that's the highest. It's the highest visual, I guess, ethnic indicator. You know.
Well, it's like, who would you expect to be all the lawyers in fucking Hong Kong?
Yeah, they're gonna be Chinese guys, of course.
I mean, yeah, this is something that I think we talked about this one night over supper, but like, just what happens if some of these small businesses need to have, like, I'm going like off on a hypothetical limb here, obviously, and
it's a good one.
It would be nice to not have something like this get that extreme, but like, now like you have to have like at least one black guy in your crew and at least one woman on your crew and all this stuff, and it's just like, or imagine if I was in a band and it's like, okay, well, I need to find my black guy, and it's like, if I don't have a, like, it's insanity.
No one understands the actual hypocrisy of that in itself, because that's what Peterson always says. Like, there's no such thing as white privilege. There's barely such a thing as majority privilege, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what was I going to say? Yeah, basically the whole problem in saying that, we need a multiculturally diverse workplace because that's diversity.
And that's what's going to solve all our problems,
yeah,
baby.
That's not diversity, because there's more differences between individuals within a group than there are differences between the groups.
Exactly.
And if you're going to say, like, that's like almost verbatim Peterson quotage right there.
But the thing about Jordan Peterson is that he literally nails it.
I know.
And it's just like, I can't say it better.
What's funny is that, like, a lot of people now are also saying, like, you're just fucking, like, making an ideology of your own full of fucking fanboys or whatever. It's like, well,
yeah,
no.
I've seen the word Petersonites referring to... I know.
Yeah, we've already...
the whole deal is that we're against ideologies. Like,
that's why it's resonating with people, is because it is about the individual.
It was resonating with individuals.
Yes.
It's like, you can't, like, how do I, like, make a business plan that appeals to the Latino community? It's like, you don't. You make one that appeals to people. Like, and, like, it's not to say that there isn't differences, obviously, between groups, but it's just back to that point. There's more differences between individuals. Yeah. There's more differences between the three of us in this room, despite the fact that we're all white.
Yeah.
Then, like,
that was Peterson's point, was that the truest diversity is between individuals. So, like, the fact that they think that diversity means multiculturally diverse for no arbitrary reason, it just doesn't fly. It's like, who in their right mind gets, like, upset if they don't see a bunch of random arbitrary, like, elements that they happen to have or inhabit represented in the upper, even not necessarily upper, in just society at large? Who gets upset about that? It's definitely a kind of pathological person, I think, because, like, some of the, like, I don't know.
Well, I agree with
that. Like some of the people I look up to most in this world have been women.
Oh yeah.
And fucking, it's arbitrary. I look up to individuals. I don't look up to You know?
Yeah, it's like you're like an individual who harbors these qualities that are worth admiration.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with.
They have absolutely nothing to do. Do you really think I sat down with a checklist for my, I was just like, I need to at least, one black artist. Okay, you know, Tosin Abasi, there you go. It's like, no.
Thundercat's pretty cool.
Yeah, Thundercat's pretty cool. I'm sufficiently hip enough. No.
I'm sufficiently hip enough.
Yeah, it's so fucked. They're amazing because of who they are who they are as people, you know?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with, any arbitrary single element that in the grand scheme doesn't actually make up that much of a person at all.
Well, it seems like we were going... this is how I was raised. This is the idea I had of Canada and the world I lived in growing up. And this was the idea portrayed to me, was that you gave everyone respect, that you... And it was regardless...
Yeah, you gave everyone their due respect.
And it was regardless of color or race or gender or any of that.
There is a certain degree of respect that you give something that is also alive.
Yeah.
You know? That's
Let alone human.
Exactly. So, especially if it's a human being. So, that's what happens. If that human being doesn't show you respect, well, then you have a choice. You know? But, before that, what reason could you possibly have? You know,
and it's just it's not moving in the direction we want to move in. We want to have that ideal of the individual being paramount and of an individual's character above their, membership card, basically, but it seems like, and that's how you would evaluate an individual, is on an individual basis, and you don't pay attention to those other things, and those other things are just. It's just it's as arbitrary as if you have all your toes or not or something. It's it just doesn't matter, right? It's nonetheless a fact about you or something. It's I'm a white male from Western Europe heritage, mostly speaking. And it's just facts about my.
Well, that's what kills.
It's 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 silly but it feels like we're just moving back towards there's such a intense pressure on talking about race or things like this, and people going it seems like we're heading so far off to the left that we're winding up in the same position we came from, that racism is the not being a racist is a new racist idea, right? It's just people trying so hard not to be racist, they're being racist because they're not treating people on an individual basis still.
They refuse to see differences, refuse to see growing up in school, that was what it was all about. You were not allowed to recognize these differences between people because the differences were what divided people, and it was all about unity and all about oneness and multiculturalism and globalization, making everybody the same, everybody on the same kind of level.
And that even seems to be happening physiologically, based on just we're all mutts, right? That I doubt my bloodline's pure. There's no way. I don't.
No one's. The concept of pure blood is nonsense. It's not even nonsense.
It's nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Yeah.
What is it? Genghis Khan is grandfather to a quarter of the world or something.
Right, because there's a billion people in China alone. You know, that's.
Well, it's
Can you tell that social justice warriors live in a bubble?
Well, they live in just a complete nonsense world. It's so unsophisticated and superficial to be classifying people based on their racial categories and stuff. It's come on, that's what we're trying not to do anymore.
Don't worry about it. We're using these words arbitrarily because they are, in fact, arbitrary.
Yeah.
You know?
Just for
quit taking it personally.
Linguistic convenience or whatever. And it's wouldn't the real thing to do just to be celebrating all the different cultures and stuff and letting we don't need to hide the history, we don't need to amplify it in any weird direction, just what if you took a sense of the whole world? Are white people the dominant race? I don't think we are.
No.
Aren't Asians really running rampant?
I mean, they yeah, well, that's what I mean.
So,
they're a seventh of the population. There really shouldn't be any hard feelings. Every single
childish.
It is childish. Every single person alive today, has experienced hardship in their lives. In varying degrees, obviously, but
sure.
everyone's experienced hardship. Everyone knows what happened in the past, Like,
well, some people don't seem to these
some
days.
people some people should read some motherfucking books.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like for the most part, people, like, I don't know, like.
Man. Well, changing gears a little bit, we were talking about legalization of marijuana being up for getting the green light in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Anton Leonardo has some fucking problems with it. But, well, so what we were talking about earlier, and like what I'm getting out of it is that they're just the policies and the way they're going about regulating it don't seem grounded at all.
No, they're approaching it like it's alcohol, which isn't true, obviously.
So, like, I also am not educated about how they went about it in Colorado and stuff, because it seems to be going really well. But I don't know, like, I would have to assume that the Canadian government would be looking to these other references.
One would think. I actually don't know anything about Colorado's, but, other than the fact that it did well, and it did take off. But I think that's because, like, you could smoke it in places that got a license. Yeah,
so this is one of the things, is that they're not going to allow anything like a weed smoking cafe, even though they already exist, for sure.
Yeah.
But,
they weren't saying that was what it was going to be. They were just really heavily implying in the survey that I had completed that, like, this is what a lot of people are saying or thinking, or, like, that's where it's headed, kind of thing.
So group consensus.
In a sense. Like, it was I mean, it was an attempt at consensus, I guess, which is why it was a survey and you were given the option to disagree or agree on that, 1 to 5 scale or whatever.
I see.
Three being neutral.
Like, you were taking this survey that was going around for them to just gauge the public on
it was the
what seems like their ideas about.
Yeah, it was the Nova Scotia provincial government.
Okay.
Yeah, and
you think it's gonna be different province to province then?
Apparently, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is with alcohol, because like you go to Alberta and you can just, or Quebec too, and you just buy alcohol. It's way cheaper at any gas station, but it's a lot like America in that sense. But not like that in other provinces.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. It's just they're not gonna get what they want to get out of it as far as they seem to be leaning.
I feel like it would have to be an interesting balance, because there's so many medical implications for marijuana that have already been well known, and
absolutely,
and so like you can't be necessarily treating it. I mean, obviously alcohol has a sanitation benefit or whatever, and like medical use, but it's like, marijuana is actually medicine for people. And how do you wind up regulating it for recreational use as well? It definitely shouldn't be. Well, it needs to be controlled, I think, like similarly to like alcohol and other like any kind of psychoactive thing should be, but I don't know. Well, okay. Well, so there's statistics in Colorado I've seen at like the amount of drunk driving incidents, like, or crashes, whatever, dropping or something. I don't remember the exact statistic, but then there's also like the driving issue on the discussion table about, how are you going to be able to test someone driving under the influence of marijuana, and also, I would argue that perhaps even being a little stoned sometimes helps people focus. Like, I definitely have that report from friends too, and I've experienced it myself, where I can like really hone in on things I'm doing more, and it's like I'm in the zone or something, And I guess like your point was that it's not the same thing, so it shouldn't be entirely regarded in the same way, but that it looks like they're heading towards just regarding it in the same way.
Yeah, they're not even really like, they're not even treating it. I don't even know. It's almost like it's like alcohol and weed are both depressants. Yeah. That's about it. That's like, that's where the similarities stop. One of them, the more you have, like, the more destructive it becomes for you and you to others / the environment, I guess. And the other one, like, the polar opposite, actually, like.
Well, I've definitely interacted with cops, like, who have caught us, like, getting high or whatever before, and they're, like, almost relieved that was what the case was, that we weren't fucked on some other crazy drug or drunk out of our minds and violent or anything.
Yeah.
And you know, I've also been completely let off the hook a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I'm really grateful about being in Canada is that I could definitely have gotten caught in similar situations in America. And it's like,